Hey y'all, thanks so much for tuning back in with us here at Hidden Creek. We have a very special guest today. This is Julie Blakey. She has been in the industry now. She owns and ran her own company for 10 years, and now she is a business consultant. And she also has helped train me. So if I planned your wedding and I was your coordinator, you have her to thank for that. So I wanted her to come in and talk to y'all today because a lot of you have been asking me about budget and how to do that kind of stuff. How do you budget your thing? How do you get started with your wedding planning? So she is here today to kind of help us out with that. So Julie, Can you tell us a little bit more about what you did in the wedding industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I was in the industry for a decade. I had my own planning business and had several wonderful planners that we worked on our team together with, and had lots and lots of amazing clients and brides. And some days I just miss it so much. And but a good season I'm in. I've got little kids, so it's nice to be able to go to soccer matches on the weekends and gymnastics and
they're
volleyball.
So cute and sweet
when they get along.
Yeah,
they're lovely.
So all children
they have their moments. So one of the things I'm super passionate about is talking to brides about their budgets, because I think it's one of the most misunderstood things in this industry. And some of it is no thanks to resources that brides and even vendors use that really are not doing the bride any favors. They're doing a disservice to the industry sometimes, and a disservice to brides by really not looking at area-specific budgets. Okay. And so they may say, like, this is a national budget. Well, that's great news, but we don't live in Podunk Town, Idaho.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that doesn't really help a Dallas bride, because the Dallas-Fort Worth market is a very thriving market. And so just in general, across anything, not even just the wedding industry, everything in Dallas-Fort Worth is going to be probably higher, but a different cost than it would be in Idaho.
Yeah.
You know? And so there's a lot of misconceptions about budgets and what you should charge and what something would cost, whether it's a service or a product. So I wanted to kind of have a conversation and go through some of those with you today.
Yes. Please help us. We need all the help we can get.
No, really great. So one of the first things I would say when you are first starting out and you've gotten engaged and you're working on your budget is it's kind of a simple thing and could be lost in translation, but to set a budget range. Okay. Everybody sets a budget. Mm-hmm. I'm going to spend $25,000 or I'm going to spend $50,000. Okay. Well, what is your range? You don't usually go into, even when you buy a house, saying I'm going to spend $200,000. Yeah. So I'm not going to look at a house that's $210,000 or $220,000. Well, what is your range, right? And so just like that with a wedding, you should sit down with your fiance and figure out what is your range. If you're saying, like right now, you're saying my budget is 40. Is 40 your top end? Is 40 your bottom end? Is your range really 35 to 45,000? And so 40 is your middle, which is great. Or is 40 your top end? And so when you start getting quotes and putting things together and your budget starts to climb because you've probably forgotten about sales tax and service charge, which can significantly kick it up, then you're not at 40 anymore. You're at 44 or 47. Yeah. And that's a big difference, you know? Yeah. And so my first thing would be to set a budget range.
Okay.
Then, and I have notes here because I want to make sure that I get it all in there. But then the next thing I would say is going back to what we said at the beginning of the video of making sure that you're looking at the right comps for the Dallas-Fort Worth market. Okay. So an example I want to give, we recently had to replace our heating and AC unit at the house.
Oh no.
And I don't know anything about these kind of things. So my husband did it all, and you know, he had a guy that came in and did it for us. Yeah. But if you were to ask me, you know, Julie, how much does it cost to have your AC unit repaired? I would be like, I don't know, several $1,000s, right?
I don't know either, yeah.
I know now.
No idea.
But I wouldn't have been able to tell you if it was $2,000 or $10,000 because I just knew it was a lot of money, right? Because I'm not in the industry. I have no context of that. I don't know what it would cost.
Yeah.
So, you know, now we know ours in particular costs about $7,500.
Oh my God.
You know, we'll get over that shock later.
Our
house feels very cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
I mean, worth it, but that's a lot of money. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's one of the things, if you take that correlation over into the wedding industry, I saw so many brides that would come to us and they would just say, I want to spend XYZ on this category. because their budget spreadsheet that they got off of Pinterest or off of some online website and that really helps walk them through all of the planning software told them that on average, we would have brides come to us and say, this very nationally well-known brand that's all over the US told us that our wedding planner should cost $750 for full service planning.
Yeah, that's a no.
I mean, like, we usually would put in 150 planning hours into a full service bride. And so if you take that down and you divide it into $750, like, my babysitter makes way more money than that. You know what I mean? And so, but brides are being told that, so they just assume that that's what they should. And if you are going to charge me more, then you're swindling me, right? And so, just like the AC unit, you need to do your research. You need to figure out what is the budget range of what a new AC unit would cost. And if the range was, let's say, $6,000 to $8,000, when we get a bid in for $7,500, we can look at that and say it's within range, right? So we might still do research on the company or the type of unit that's going in or something like that. But we also know if we get a bid for $5,000 for an AC unit, we may have hit the jackpot. We may have got a company that's going to charge us less for one reason or another, and it may work out okay. But I would at least go into that situation being skeptical, because it might not be right.
Yeah.
The same thing is true if you get a bid for $11,000. You either have like the Cadillac of all AC units, which could be great. I don't know what that really gets you in an AC unit, but you may have something that's wonderful, or you may be overpricing and you could be losing money by going with that company. And so, but for us to come in and tell an AC guy, well, it should only cost this because Pinterest told me it should cost this much money, you may regret that decision. So that's the second thing that I would say is make sure that you're doing your research on each of the different categories and services and products that you want to make sure that when you create your budget and put it together, it's at least within a range that's accurate.
Right. Yeah.
Then the next thing that I would say is figuring out what kind of consumer that you are as a bride. Have you heard the concept good, better, best?
A little bit, but what does it mean?
So good, better, best is kind of in the sales world we talk about. In my previous career, I used to sell cameras.
Oh my gosh.
Which is funny because don't ask me about it now. I don't know any of the cool gadgets and things like that. But when we would have customers come in for a camera, we would ask them a couple things that they wanted their camera to do. They want to take underwater pictures on vacation or, a couple of things that they were looking for. And then we would show them 3 different models of cameras. A good model, a better model, and a best model. And they would psychologically already have decided, not even knowing it, right, which one they fell into. And they would know they're fine with the good model. It's okay. It's just, for the vacation, not a big deal. I don't want to spend all that money. Or maybe in the middle. Or no, I want the Cadillac of it. I want the best version I can get. I'm going to use this like forever, And so we do the same thing without realizing it. If we're going to go shop for furniture, you may be like, I'm just going to go to Target. I'm going to get that, side table and I'll be great. You may go to West Elm or you may go to Restoration Hardware and you're going to spend 3 completely different price points for your side table. And each consumer is going to be equally as thrilled with their purchase, right? Because that's what they wanted. So it's a very interesting concept. But as a consumer, if you can figure out where you fall in that, then it helps you understand when you're getting your budget ranges for a product or a service when you're planning your wedding, then if you should be falling in the good range, the middle, which is the better range, or the top of the line, kind of the higher range, which is the best range. And that's how you build your budget together.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a different way to look at it as you approach a budget. And just like with most things in life, there may be some things that you just don't care about as much. Like we had a planning client not one time, I say it like it only happened once, but we've had clients that are super big foodies. And so food is a super important thing for their wedding day and for their guests. They want them to have, certain either types of food or quality of food or experiences with their food. Well, that's going to cost more money. So we would allocate the budget accordingly so that they could have more money in that category. So we would either maybe say, you're going to need to increase your budget because you can't necessarily do the other things for less.
Right.
Or if we could, we would take a little bit of room spread throughout the rest of the budget and throw it into the catering budget. But that doesn't mean that everyone was that way, right? Some people like food, they would literally be like, hey, is food important to you? Well, and it basically was their way of saying, I don't want the food to be awful, but
Yeah.
like it can be just normal, good food.
That was me. I didn't really care about my food. I wanted good pictures. Pictures was my biggest thing.
Yes, absolutely. And so it doesn't mean that if you put yourself into one of those categories of good, better, best, that every decision across your whole entire wedding budget and across your entire life is going to fall into that specific category. It just means that helps you as you're kind of projecting what your wedding budget range might be, what you should look for in each of the different categories.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay, and then there's just a couple other quick things for you. One of the things that we talked about off camera for a little bit was like, you know, what is some advice for hiring a wedding planner, or you know, what are full service planners really doing that's different, or things like that. So one of the things that obviously is no surprise, since I was a former wedding planner for 10 years, it's in my blood, I think everybody should have a full service wedding planner.
Okay.
No surprise. But I also realize not everyone is going to do that, right? And that's okay. That's totally fine. For whatever reason, good, better, best reasons, or other reasons. But one of the examples that ties into the previous points about your budget and knowing like what things should cost and how wedding planners can help you set those ranges and those budgets for you. We had a client one time that only contracted us for a month of services, which was great, no problem. And as we got to kind of confirming her details, we realized that she had placed a custom linen order for these beautiful, like a different fabric. It was going to be beautiful for all of her guest linens. And when we went to confirm it with the company, they had been told the dimensions of the table were smaller than the actual sizes of the tables provided at that venue. So it wasn't a situation where the linens were too big and we'll just tuck the linens under the table.
They were too small.
They were too small, and they would have ridden up off of the ground.
Because the bride told them
the bride had given them the wrong dimensions. So the vendor, the linen rental company that made those to custom order, was in the right, but they had just been told wrong dimensions.
Oh no.
So 3 weeks before her wedding, we had to go and get brand new linens made, and it ended up costing like an additional $1,700 because they had to be rushed and all this kind of stuff. And so I look at, and that's just one out of, you know, a drop in the bucket. I look at these examples and I'm like, if that bride would have just done even just one level higher of a planning service with us, we could have saved her the heartache of that and the money of that, and it would have cost her the same amount of money.
She would have just spent it
having
more help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's where it's like when you're just following off of Pinterest or these things online that this is how you plan your wedding and everything. It's no different than if I was to walk in and try and do your job one day. I'm smart, but I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to mess up, and I'm not going to have full context because if all I have to go off of is Googling what I should do,
oh my gosh,
I'm going to make a mistake. And it might not be anything that's like catastrophically wrong, but I'm going to make mistakes. It's going to take me longer to plan or to do your job, and I'm going to make financial errors, right? Yeah. And so at the end of the day, we just always would help our clients see the value of, we will walk alongside you, and you can be as involved as you want to be with your wedding planner. If you don't want to do anything and you don't want to know what's going on, you don't have to. But if you want to, then you can happily be involved. So you just find the right wedding planner for you and the right amount of service, whether it's full service with design, partial service, month of, and then of course you guys here have your own inside coordination that you offer. So I have to sneak that in because wedding planning is still a passion. Yeah. The last point I wanted to go over is how you decide who's on your guest list.
Oh, yeah.
Because once you set your budget, and I see a lot of clients that they'll set their guest list and their budget either at the same time or like reverse, but they're so close to each other, they're just right over top of each other. And there really should be some differentiation between those. And sometimes you may, because of family dynamics or things like that, you may need to lead first with looking at your guest list and who you need to invite. Okay. But that probably means that your budget is not going to be dictated by what you want to spend. It's going to be dictated by how many people you're inviting. Okay. So the way we're talking about it today is look at your budget first, because that is usually a driving factor for most people is how much money they can spend. So you look at your budget range first, and then from there, then you build out your guest list. Because there are fixed costs in the wedding industry and there's fluctuating costs. Like you guys are a fixed cost, right? Your venue, you don't care if they bring in 20 people to their wedding or 200 people.
Right, yeah.
It costs the same amount of money.
Exactly.
Same with a photographer, right? So, and there might be some variation. You might need a second shooter if some photographers say if you have more than this many people, I'd recommend a second. But generally speaking, 95% of it is going to be the same cost.
Okay.
And so then you have fluctuating costs in there. And those are things like your flowers, your linens. Of course, you guys have in-house linens and things like that are offered, but you're going to have other costs that are going to be fluctuating. Your food, how much alcohol you need to buy, things like that are directly related to how many people you have. So that is the biggest way to either get completely out of range or to keep your budget in your range is how many people you're going to invite.
Okay.
And the one piece of advice that I always would tell clients on how to decide if you should invite somebody.
Yes. What is that?
Would you sit down and sit down with them at dinner at a nice fancy restaurant? Like, would you want to be in a conversation with them for that long? And the second thing is, would you pick up the tab and pay for it? Like, think if you're going to a very fancy restaurant and it's maybe $300-400, and that may even be getting off easy if you're at a nice restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So would you spend a couple $100s and pay for that person to come? If not, they probably shouldn't make the cut.
Okay.
Now, there's exceptions, right? My mom insisted on inviting a couple of their friends that I had never met to our wedding. So there I am at the wedding. Hi, I'm Julie. I've never met you before.
Yeah.
So there's some of that happens and you can't get away from it. But by and large, when you're looking at your own friends list, that's what you should go off of is, would you actually sit down and enjoy having dinner with that person? And would you pick up the tab and pay for them? And if you wouldn't on one of or both of those accounts, then they probably shouldn't make the cut.
I've never heard it put like that, but that makes a lot of sense in my head because now I'm looking back at like my guest list and I'm like, oh, I could have probably saved a little bit of money.
Yeah. And it's nice. I mean, when you're planning a wedding, you start to realize like, but I want these people to know that I'm friends with them or I enjoy them or I'm not mad at them, so I want to invite them to my wedding. But then when you look at the other side of it, you're paying, generally speaking, you're paying about $150 to $200 per person that you invite to your wedding.
Oh, wow.
So if you have about 150 people, which is average guest list these days, if you had 150 people come to your wedding and you're looking at that at $150 to a $200 per person range, that's about $26,000.
Okay.
So you can go off of also the good, better, best. You may not be spending $150 per person. You may be spending $300 and have, a bigger budget for floral and decor or food and things like that.
Right.
But that helps give a range of, at about 150 people at your wedding, you're usually going to spend about $150 to $200 per person. And then bam, right there, that's how you're also coming up with how much you're spending total rough estimate. You know what I mean? Because we had weddings that we would plan that were in that range, and we had weddings that we planned that were $150,000 total for the same guest count, right? So you can go all over the map with that. But that helps kind of a jumping off point to know who you should invite on your special day.
Oh, awesome.
We crammed in a lot, and I think we went way over our time.
It's fine. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And thank you for sharing all these tips.
Absolutely.
And
we love Brett. We love Brett.
Thank you. So if you just watched this video and now you're wondering, well, I guess I should probably hire a full service wedding planner and you don't know where to start, feel free to shoot me an email and I can refer you to some great full service wedding planners. Since Julie is no longer doing it, but we have people that we can recommend for y'all. So I'll put my email below and y'all just feel free to reach out to me. I hope this video helped y'all out. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.